Can you work with dates and times in Excel? How about you take this challenge and find out? You'll have 4 questions to test your skills, and you can use the link in the description to download the spreadsheet. So once you're ready to go, let's get to it. Okie dokie. For your first Excel question, you must calculate the total number of hours between the 2 times in decimal format. To pull off this calculation, start by selecting cell D5 and enter the following formula. Equals, open parentheses, C5 minus B5, close parentheses, multiplied by 24, and then press enter. And just like that, you get back the difference in hours. Now why does this work? This works because times are simply stored as numbers within Excel. For example, the time of 6 a.m. is equivalent to the numerical value of 0.25. Now why is this the case? Why is 6 a.m. equal to 0.25? Well, times in Excel are simply fractions of a day, and 1 day in Excel is equal to the value of 1. And so, if there are 24 hours in a day, and 6 a.m. represents 6 hours of that day, then you divide 6 by 24 and you get back the value of 0.25. And that is why 6 a.m. is equal to 0.25 in Excel. Now what about 6 p.m.? What would that be? 6 p.m. represents 18 hours of the current day. The first 12 hours brings you to 12 p.m. noon, and the next 6 bring you all the way to 6 p.m. So, 18 hours in total. And then, when you take that 18 and divide it by 24, you get back 0.75, which is the numerical representation of 6 p.m. in Microsoft Excel. Hopefully, this is starting to click a little bit. And, with all of this knowledge in mind, hopefully the formula that we have here in cell D5 makes a little more sense as well. Looking at the formula, we take the 2 time values and subtract them from one another, and remember that these are just decimal values, and so the result gives us a decimal value. And so, to turn this decimal value into a number of hours, we simply have to multiply this value by 24. And that gives us the final number of hours between the 2 times. And after covering all of that, you can complete question 1 by using the fill handle to drag the formula down for all of the other times. Okie dokie. Now that we've got question 1 out of the way, let's move on to question number 2. For question number 2, your goal is to calculate the date using the year, month, and day numbers that have been provided. To solve this question, you can simply use the date function. The date function takes the year, month, and day values and turns them into a final date value. So, selecting cell E5, enter the formula, equals, date function, and then select B5 for the year value, and then select C5 for the month value, and then select D5 for the day value. You can then close parentheses and press enter. And just like that, you get back the calculated date. You can then use the fill handle to copy this formula down for all of the remaining data. And that completes question number 2. Let's move on to question number 3. For question number 3, your goal is to write 2 different formulas to calculate the end time by adding the hours and minutes to the start time. Okie dokie. Using what we know about times in Excel, and see question number 1 if you don't remember what I'm talking about, we can solve this problem by turning the hours and minutes into a time value or fraction of 24, and then we can simply add that value to the start time. So let's look at the first way that we can do this. Selecting cell E5, we know that we need to add the hours with the minutes and then divide this value by 24 to get the appropriate time value. But before we move on, we need to convert the minutes to hours, and we can simply do this by dividing the minutes by 60, and that's because there are 60 minutes in every 1 hour. Okie dokie. Everything looks good so far. Now we just need to add this calculated time value to the start time. So we add a plus, and then select the start time in cell B5. And just like that, we get back the end time using our first formula. Now what about the second formula? For the second formula, I propose using the time function to turn the hours and minutes into a time value rather than just using simple math. So, selecting cell F5, enter the formula equals time function, and then select the hours in cell C5. After that, for the second argument, select the minutes in cell D5. And finally, enter a 0 for the third argument of the time function. We enter a 0 here because even though there are no seconds, we cannot leave the third argument empty, so we just enter in a 0. After that, close parentheses to complete the time function, and then add a plus, and select cell B5, which contains the start time. And now, when we hit enter, we get back the calculated end time just like that. The time function converts the hours and minutes into a time value, and then that value is added to the start time to give us back the final end time. Now, with the two formulas written, we can select E5 and F5, and then use the fill handle to copy the formula down for all of the remaining data. And that officially completes question number 3. Let's move on to question number 4. For question number 4, your goal is to calculate the number of days between the start and end date. Also, you must exclude the listed holidays as well as all Sundays. So basically, you are trying to count the number of work days between the start date and end date. And you must exclude the listed holidays, and your only weekend day is Sunday instead of both Saturday and Sunday. Although this might sound like quite a tedious task, there is actually a function that you can use to make this calculation very easy, and that is the network days INTL function. So, in cell C8, enter the formula equals networkdays.intl function, and then select the start date for the first argument, and select the end date for the second argument. Now, for the third argument, you only want to consider Sunday as a weekend, or non-work day, and all of the other days should be considered as work days. So, you enter in a value of 11 to force the function to only consider Sundays as non-work days. And finally, for the fourth argument, you select the holidays listed in E5 through E8. You can then close parentheses and hit enter. And just like that, you get the number of days between the start date and end date, excluding the listed holidays as well as all of the Sundays. And that officially completes question number 4 and your 7th Spreadsheet Life Excel challenge. So did you find the dates and times easy or tough? Leave me a comment below to let me know how you did. And if you want to see more videos like this, I highly encourage you to subscribe. That being said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will catch you in the next Spreadsheet Life video.